today we have Dawn. Dawn is part of the Brielle Grace Foundation, and she is joining us here to tell us a little bit about her story. So thank you so much for joining us, Dawn. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yes, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. So let's get started a little bit first, Dawn, with your diagnosis, a little bit of a summary of what's happened.
Okay. I had two cancer diagnoses. So in 2013, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. And then 7 months later, I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma, breast cancer.
Wow, what a shock of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And so how are you feeling when there was two diagnoses in place?
I was obviously in shock, but I was more, when I heard the second one, all I could think is, how am I going to tell everyone again? How am I going to call my husband and tell him I have cancer again? Like, I don't even have the words because I can't even understand it. And now I have to go and call my family and loved ones. And I didn't know what to do or what to say. I really just didn't.
Of course, of course. And that would be a shock of a lifetime. And were you in the process of your first diagnosis at that time, going through all of the work on that, and then this was piled on top?
No, I had just finished. I was actually done and healed from big surgery. The colon cancer, the surgery was probably, even out of all my breast cancer surgeries, that colon cancer surgery was the hardest. It was definitely the most painful and the hardest one. So, your body's still healing because it's under a year.
Wow. Oh, geez. You're absolutely right. It's a second blow, and it really is a roller coaster, this journey.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what are some of the treatments that you went through.
Well, luckily for the colon cancer, it was all just surgery. Not luckily, that's the wrong choice of words. But for breast cancer, I had to do 6 months of chemo, a year of Herceptin treatments. I have undergone 15 surgeries already with the breast cancer, radical double hysterectomy, a full hysterectomy, a radical double mastectomy. I had implant failures, and then implants had to come out again because they were causing lymphoma, and there was a recall, and it was just a hernia, a part hernia during chemo, just like crazy incidences of just kept coming up, and having to do it to heal properly and get my body to heal and be stronger for the next obstacle course, so to speak, is what I always kept thinking, like, what's next? What's next?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What a journey. What a journey. And so what are some of the thoughts that were going through your head at this time? What were some of the major bumps in the road that really shifted you as a person?
I get emotional because the major shift was people that I thought were friends or even family, as soon as I was diagnosed, would always have excuses not to be around me, or just not answer the phone. And maybe they didn't know what to say, and I understand that in the beginning, but to pick up the phone and be like, do you want to watch a movie? You want to watch a Bad Life type movie and get some popcorn? Like, just something to keep my mind off of it. And I always found maybe those relationships were always me running to take care of them. And when I couldn't do it no longer, they just didn't know how to be a friend or even family member sometimes. And it took me a while to forgive myself for being so angry, for being so hurt. And I think that's the hardest part of this journey, because I can't tell somebody else how to behave. I wanted to tell them how to act, what to say. Why aren't they saying this? Why aren't they doing that? But then it took a long time, a few years, to realize that it's not my job anymore to carry their burdens or to tell them how to react but I can tell myself how to react and how to feel and what to allow and not to allow anymore. So I can heal and I can be a happier Dawn.
Wow. What a beautiful awareness, Dawn. And, I identify with what you're saying, that kind of feeling of poof, where did they go?
Yeah.
And that frustration, that anger, that hurt that comes with that. So,
Yeah.
I truly understand where you're coming from there. And for you to be able to, instead of projecting outward, instead say, what can Dawn do
Yeah.
to mitigate this pain? How can Dawn move forward in life?
Right.
Is an absolute power that some people never touch in their dizziest daydreams.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thanks. Not there all the time. And, it's not like all the time, every day, 100%. We all have our, I think that's the hardest part, that you gotta allow yourself to, you had a bad day. We overreacted, something. I yelled at the cashier or my husband or my friend, but I feel like when we get to that point sometimes, and it always happens to me, to recognize it quicker and take care of it quicker instead of letting it manifest and keep going and going and going, because at the end of the day, you're the only one still stuck in that, and just, you're the one going in the circles in your head, where that other person probably forgot about it, went on with their day, and has no idea that you're still this angry.
Of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so would you say that cancer, to some degree, has taught you to be more self-aware in that way? Like,
Yeah.
what does remission really mean to you? What has really come out of and changed for you? I know number one is the self-awareness.
Yeah, exactly. I think in the beginning, everyone else was like, yay, you're in remission. And I'm like, yeah, like I couldn't be that excited in the way they were excited. And I don't know. I see, I guess, women ringing the bell after chemo and this and that, maybe because I'm like, but it's not over. Maybe in my head, it's just not over. And I did have a lot more, and I wanted to be excited. I didn't know how to be excited. I think because everyone told me, you got to be excited. This is so great. Aren't you excited? But they're always telling us how we feel, or they're telling me how I feel and how should be like so excited. And I'm like, and I would just smile and be like, yeah, but I wasn't. It took me a while. I wanted to be that girl shouting from the rooftops, like, I'm in remission, but I just wasn't. In the beginning, I really wasn't. I simply couldn't find her. And it took me a while, to find her, and then finally, I don't know, I kept going into the kitchen after a while and cooking and chopping, and then I realized, like, that was my time and that was my thing. So everybody finds their therapy, and mine is the kitchen. And like, you find it in the places you least expect it. But that's where I can be in my own head and and I don't have to constantly think about that. I'm thinking about stuff that makes me feel good, and cooking and doing stuff, coming up with recipes, and then that just makes me feel good. And I could make sense a little bit better of all the pain and all the confusion and the sense of loss and where did I belong? Where did I fit? And I think that's the hardest is where do I belong and where do I fit?
Mm. And so you began to find your version of lessons after cancer, which was this food prep. And I know for anyone who follows you, and I'll write it in the show notes, that your food and your health and your passion for all of these different amazing cancer fighting foods and all of these sorts of things is just, it is awe-inspiring to watch.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And so you're going through all these treatments still. That's one thing that a lot of people don't realize with remission, is that you're not done at all. Like you ring that bell, that's great, but you still have an appointment on Tuesday.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So you've got all that, but now chopping, right? You're just, this is your minute, this is your moment. How did that start to evolve into what you do now? This health, this, creating all these healthy recipes, and just, I love watching you.
I think because I grew up eating fast food. I grew up eating crap. I grew up raised by a single dad who worked, and we did what we had to do, and we a lot of processed foods, but everybody does their best, and it's not for me to tell somebody what their best is. And then I think even when I first got diagnosed, I still wasn't eating right because nobody taught me. I didn't have that kind of, I have a husband who's great and he's all in the medical field. So it's black and white and medicine, and that's great, but it's still not going to help me heal. It's going to mask what's going on. It's not going to help my body. And I don't know, started cooking and started eating and just found that I was enjoying this. I'm like, wow, I like this. This tastes good. Like every time I was like, want to get something to eat? I'm like, I'll just cook something because I don't know. And I feel it just helps me with my day. It helps me to give me energy. It puts me in a better mood. And when I'm in a bad mood, I find myself in the kitchen like you start out cooking angry. Yeah. And then it just turns into, I can take the deep breath. So I find something to help me take that deep breath. And I still do, because I have days where my chest is in my throat. And, a lot of people do meditation and yoga, and all of those are great. And anything that you find that works for you, but I never realized that I needed this until I did. And I don't know, I love it. And it keeps me centered, so to speak, and I love watching other people do their plant-based stuff, because I'm like, I don't have to be stuck, and I could change the protein and I could play with this and make it my own. That's where cooking is just a joy, because you could take anything and make it your own. Even if you see someone else's recipe, they're putting it up there for you to share it, for you to eat it, for you to try it. Like, I know sometimes people get worried, like, oh, I don't want that person to think. I'm like, but that's what they're supposed to think. That's why it's out in the universe. So take that and run with it. These are wonderful things that I feel, take for granted sometimes, or we get so absorbed with the worry of what will someone think. And we all do it. And that's the hard part too, with, breast cancer, like your hair, your breasts, your this, different scars, or your body's different now. And what will people think? But you have to get to that place and say, but what do I think? And that's what is hard, because I have to remind myself, like, well, what do you think? Do you like it? Do you, do you like it? And anything. And I think that's the hard part, is getting there.
I 100% agree. And I really think that's how cancer can turn pain into power. And that's a choice. It's important that we choose, and
Yeah.
not everybody does. And that's why, you know, the pioneer work that you're doing is so important.
Thank-
Um, absolutely, because we want to show other survivors that you can make a choice to
Yeah.
turn your pain into purpose. And
Right.
so that's what you've done. You're asking yourself these really important questions, and
Mhm.
you're saying, what's my pain and what's my purpose, from fast food to this beautiful handmade healthy food. Do you think that is really how you alchemized your journey?
To a point, like I get asked, and like I can only speak for myself, that in the beginning, like I used to think it was cancer that was this negative thing in my life, and that was the negative. And then I realized it was who and what I surrounded myself with. That was the negative. That
Mm.
was the cancer, so to speak, because the cancer woke me up. It gave me back my life, so to speak, because it made me start being aware. It made me start also being aware and mindful of other people, where I meet so many women and men and families, and they share their stories with me. And I used to be like, why are they telling me? But now I'm like, because you know what? God chose me, and that's how I feel. And I love that they share their stories. And I don't have to give my opinion. They just want to, everybody just wants to be heard or talk. I know sometimes it's hard, because if you tell someone my diagnosis or this or that, you always get, my aunt's mother's brother had that, or my sister's friend had that. And, and you're just like, now you're apologizing to them if you just told them your diagnosis. So I am very mindful when we do golf outings. I do a lot of charity events. We help a lot of women in local hospitals, and we pay their bills. We create recovery mastectomy care packages for them. So besides the food, I do hope we do offer nutritionists on our breast cancer website as well. I offer free workshops, and you can join from anywhere in the world because it's on Zoom. But at the end of the day, I love that nobody's judged. Nobody, everybody just, you're just a beautiful human being, and share your stories. And that's it, you share. It's not for me to give my opinion, but it's for me to listen. And sometimes we all just want someone just to listen, whether you're sharing something happy, you're venting, or diagnosis. I mean, sharing your diagnosis is hard, and it's very personal. And when you're sharing something so personal and so devastating, and someone goes on about their friend, I know maybe they're trying to relate. I'm not sure. But I've learned, like, even when people talk to me, I don't talk about my diagnosis to them. I want to hear them. I want to hear what they do. I want to hear what they went through, because that is therapy for them to talk, and it's their way and when they choose to. I can't tell them to talk. It's when they choose to. And I'm blessed and honored that I'll meet someone in the store, and they just start talking. I don't tell them anything about me. I don't know why, but I'm glad that they do, because they just needed someone to talk to that day. And then I can give them my cards or whatever, or maybe not, or just give them a hug and walk away. Sometimes that's all we both need, or maybe I needed it. Maybe I think that they needed to talk, to tell me their story, but maybe I needed to hear it more than they needed to tell it because it helped me heal.
What a beautiful version of community that you've created for yourself
Thanks.
and others. It is.
It's
Tell me more about the foundation, about Brielle Grace and the
um,
creation.
I know a lot of people get the mistake and they're always like, "Hi, Brielle." I'm like, well, just like Susan B. Komen or breast cancer is the name of the foundation. So Brielle Grace actually is my granddaughter's name. And she was born a month before I was diagnosed. So I felt like maybe she was born and God gave me this gift that cancer's not going to kick your butt right now. And I also feel like so many, we name things after people that we've lost. And I totally understand that it's their memory and we're keeping their memory. But I was like, why can't I want to name something like, I want to name my foundation after something that gave me strength, something that gave me hope, something that guided me that you're going to get through this. Because I had no idea how long and hard this road was going to be. Right. I had no idea about the surgeries yet. I had no idea about the chemo and all this that was going to be part of your life. And like you said, a lot of people think, oh, ring, ding, ding, that you rang the bell, you're done. And you're just like, not even close, right? There's so much more. And then, so Brielle Grace Breast Cancer Foundation, I did a few breast cancer walks. And then I decided I needed to do more. What can I do? Because I was hearing all these stories and just absorbing it and loving it. And I could, just the stories were just incredible. And the people that I've met and the friendships that they're friendships and family like I've never known. I've never known this kind of support and this kind of love and kindness. It's something totally different that you could never explain, you know, and it's just wonderful. And then I was like, well, what can I do to help more? And I was just like, I'm going to start my own foundation and help people right here. And, some people contact me that live not so close. We'll send them recovery care packages and stuff like that because nobody should ever feel alone. And so now we help, our grants are open at certain times a year. And if you're diagnosed with cancer, my goal is they use their resources. And if I'm helping pay bill A, someone else is paying bill B, and so on and so on, because we wish we can all pay the bills for one entire family or all the families, and it's just impossible. So if I could pay your car payment, and you just have to go to treatments. You just have to go to the doctors because there's nothing worse than adding on the stress of how am I going to get this bill paid, and I got to get to treatments, and I got to pay for daycare or whatever it is. It's important to that person. It's not for me to decide which bill and what's important. If that's the bill and that is what's hanging over their head and that's what's giving them the stress, I am going to pay as much as I can, if I could pay the whole bill, just so you don't have to stress over that one thing. And I hope that it helped. If they want a nutritionist or wellness coach, we provide that for 30 days in the hopes that maybe they'll continue after. So it's not like one day, you're like, oh, that was great, you never do it again. But 30 days is consistency, and we all need that consistency, I feel. So we offer lymphatic massages and acupuncture, and we'll offer 3 sessions, and we'll send you to someone that we've collaborated with, and we'll pay for 3 because, like I said, 1, you're like, that was great, you never do it again. 2, you might be like, that was good. The 3rd, now you're starting to be consistent, and hopefully they'll continue with this healing because your healing, I feel like, starts from when you're diagnosed. And I didn't know that to start my healing then. So I didn't start my healing until after my treatments, after my diagnosis, all of that, like I just didn't. I didn't know how. I just, everything was, was medical, and I just listened to what I'm supposed to do, black and white, and never knew I had so many options out there. I never knew that, oh my God, I could do both. I think that's a lot of mistaken mistake that we all make. We mistake and we don't know that I could do medical and I could do holistic. Why I could do both. Now I've met so many people and I'm like, oh my God, do both. Huh. But I think because we're just so caught up when we're in that first diagnosis. And you have people who read everything and all of that, or you have people who just are like, that's what the doctor said, don't Google, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to Google anything, I'm just going to do it. And I feel that's when you meet all these people and hear their stories, and then it helps you evolve, because maybe I never knew who I was, and this helped me discover that Dawn that was always in there, and she finally came out. She finally surfaced and manifested, and now I'm growing. And like I said, I have days where I'm like, what if I just don't get out of bed today? What if I don't do this today? And then I think, and I'm like, but what if I do? What will happen if I do? And it's just so, this foundation just connects me and helps. I hope that it'll help another family connect, or another woman, whether she's alone or whether she is surrounded by 20 people. Sometimes we could be in a room with 20 people and never feel so alone. And that's what I'm hoping between our workshops and the different healing services that we can offer, just to help some person or someone feel good and know they're not alone. If they want to call and just talk, sometimes they just want to call and talk and ask if that's okay. And absolutely, that is perfectly okay. Because I know I made phone calls in my first diagnosis, and I'm like, you're putting me on hold? Or, oh, you could try this number and that number, and maybe they can. And then there was a few support groups, and oh, we're full. And I'm like, so I got very, very discouraged, I think, in the beginning. And being so discouraged of always hitting a dead end, I was just like, forget it, and threw my hands in the air. And then I guess it just took me a while to figure it out. There are so many helpful people out there. I just maybe was looking in the wrong places, but those wrong places led me to the right places, is at the end of the day, which now is helping me to help others. So like I said, if it's paying a bill and that's going to help them, if you just had a mastectomy and when you were checking out of the hospital, you got one of our recovery care packages, I love it. And that made you feel good, and you went home and just had little goodies in there and stuff to make you feel good. That maybe it's also the things that I wish I would have had. So now I'm able to give it to someone else that didn't know they needed it either.
Dawn, I am just honored to hear about the foundation more.
Thanks.
You had so many dead ends, and so you created the ability for people to find somewhere with a tunnel, with a light.
Yeah.
You are stopping those dead ends.
Trying to,
Yeah.
Yeah. You just got to figure out, it's hard. Sometimes we don't figure out, but we don't have to. I think that's what it is. We think we have to figure everything out, and give yourself a break. I think, and that's the biggest thing too. Sometimes the unknown, that could be the best part of our life. And we always are afraid of the unknown. But the unknown is where we grow. The unknown is where we learn. And the unknown is, like I said, it's the best part of our life. It's where we can thrive.
Well, I think this is a beautiful place. to end here, because what wonderful advice. My next question was, what single piece of advice would you give? I'm curious if that's what you would give.
I would tell them the advice is the unknown is where we grow. It's where we learn who we are and who we could be. You know, it's the best part of your life is the unknown. And everything's planned, but I think the unknown, most people are scared of it, and you have to welcome it and let it is. It's where you will thrive if you welcome the unknown.
Well, Dawn, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for lending us your wisdom and for letting the listeners know about the foundation and all of the beautiful ways that you have alchemized your journey. And I will make sure to leave any way that people can connect with you and your beautiful foundation in the show notes. And
Thank you.
again, thank you.
I hope I get to meet you one day when you're over. We'll find a middle place to meet. I would love to meet you, and thank you so much for having me and all that you do to help so many beautiful human beings. Thank you.